Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you another Unlocking Age of Sigmar. This time I'm going to be attacking the Sylvaneth. Now there's been a whole bunch of new releases with the Sylvaneth, most notably Alariel, and atop this gigantic monstrous beetle, as well as a whole bunch of other units. There's new war scrolls. There's a new battle tome with allegiances very specific to Sylvaneth. They're the very first ones that are doing this. And, we can only hope that all the other battle tomes that are coming out after this are going to be in the same format. We can expect that, certainly, with specific faction and sub-faction allegiances and artifacts and such. But it would be nice to go back to some of the tomes that have been released and maybe get some updates on some of those. That would be wonderful. But this one seems to have all of the bells and whistles and all the good stuff that the General's Handbook has presented to us. So you can utilize a number of different things for your match play. This can also obviously fit in for open play and for narrative play. But we're going to really look today specifically as far as match play is concerned, the competitive sense. I've got a couple lists that I'm going to go and show with something I'm going to be running myself and just testing out and trying out at least Alariel, but some of the new Battalion scrolls. And I may try to sneak in as many of the new units as I can. I want to be forthcoming though with the units that I currently have. I think I have 5 Treemen in various different forms. One is built as a Durthu model. Now a Spirit of Durthu. I think I have 2 Ancients and 2 Treemen. And then of course now I have Alariel. This is actually the front cover picture of the box of itself. It's a little blurry, unfortunately, but I just want to make sure I had a right, big enough picture. And I have about 35 Dryads and 2 Branch Wraiths. That is my force, but I do have quite a few woods. I have four of the Citadel woods, which, by the way, 2 of which it says 2+, but I think 2 is what you need to. I have 2 of them are required to make a Sylvaneth Wildwood, and I'm building out about 10 other bases so I can have additional ones to put on the table. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that's so significant and why you should consider doing something. If you're going to be playing Sylvaneth, you need to have an arsenal of forests, of Sylvaneth Wildwoods, almost as important as the array of units that you're going to be bringing onto the table. So I'm going to look at some of the war scrolls. I'm going to look at some of the new battalions and how some of these things work synergistically, and then I'm going to give you some ideas on how you might be able to play it. But the first thing I want to do is I want to go over the rules for allegiance. Now this is really important. We have certainly the rules for the composition. I'm going to show you some snapshots here so you can take a look at that on how, for instance, you need to build your army. What are the requirements in building your army? Things like having maximum leaders, maximum behemoths. We've gone over this in previous videos, and you've probably seen other videos that talked about the General's Handbook and some of the stuff that's listed there. I'm just going to pull this one up here. This is for max unit types. So what we're going to see is, and my sweet spot right now is talking about 2,000-point games. And from my perspective, I know that I've heard a couple of people talk about how there's less models on the table for the equivalent 2,500-point game. I kind of feel like a 2,000-point game is about a 2,500-point game from equivalent 8th edition. It's just that we have a lot of more bigger models, which are more expensive. We have more monstrous cav and monstrous infantry and more monsters in general that we saw in 8th edition. So they're inherently going to be bigger points. But I do believe that the point structure, the sweet spot, in my opinion, for a competitive game is probably a good 2,000 points. You feel free to play 2,500. I think I would prefer to play 2,500 because there's more leaders. You can have more behemoths on the table. Behemoths, by the way, sometimes monsters, sometimes not. It's a battlefield role for just really big models, which I have differing opinions on. Some things I feel are appropriate. Some things I think were embellishments. But it is what it is. And, of course, as GW has been saying many times, feel free to change things as you wish. But this is the guideline that most people are going to be falling in line with, and especially when it comes to testing it. I think a lot of TOs and a lot of the tournaments, a lot of people I've spoke to, not just in the local region where I live, but in other places around the U.S. and the U.K., I hear that that's what they're doing. They really want to test this out. They want to see how this works, and if they want to comp it, they'll comp it down the road. So, and that's good. I really think it's important to try. This is the same thing I said about open play for AOS when it first came out. Try it. See what it's like. See what's broken, see what you need to do to change it if you really want to change it, but get an idea of how it works. Now we're in a match play system that GW has given us, and I want to explore that as much as possible because there's a lot of people that even if they don't want to play tournaments, they want points, they want structure, they want a force organization chart like this. They want a semblance of balance, even if they're playing open or narrative campaign. Now I like to play everything, and I prefer more of an open play. But I really also respect that this type of format with the General's Handbook is going to promote a growth in Age of Sigmar, and that's good for everybody. And I will, of course, be dabbling in this because I will be engaging in some tournaments. And if most people that I run into say, hey, let's play 2,000 points, that's how I'm going to play it, and that's what I think is going to be the most common point structure. If you want to play 2,500, feel free. Anybody who meets up with me and wants to play 2,500, I am more than happy to do so. But I'm going to build my lists in this series based on a 2,000 point structure. So what we're looking at for 2,000 points is 1 to 6 leaders. You need to have at least one minimum. The battle line units, which are like core units, you need to have at least 3 of those units in your force structure. 0 to 4 artillery, which is not going to come into play with Sylvaneth. There are no cannons or rock throwers in with the Treeman. And behemoths, you can have a maximum of 4 behemoths at this level, which does hamper you in some ways with some things that I like to do. I have 5 of them, not even counting Alariel, but bear with me because that's not such a bad thing. And other units are any number. And what I mean by that's not such a bad thing is because depending on how you play the game, depending on what your interpretation of the rules are, and I'm not sure exactly how this is going to pan out in match play. Being able to bring new units onto the table is something that you have to put points aside for, but doing that can actually break the behemoth rule, for instance. I don't know how much stuff you can summon that's artillery, but I know there's a lot of behemoth stuff you can summon, and there is the ability in this list to summon in more behemoths, more treemen or tree lords or tree lord ancients, and doing so. I think if I understand the rules correctly, in order to do that, you would need to have those points set aside in order to have that as an option. But the points set aside for summoning, this is how I read it, guys. If you feel differently, that's fine. It's a pool. You don't have to define a specific war scroll for it, but you need to put the points aside for anything that's brought onto the board that unit-wise, new unit that didn't exist when you deployed. And even deploying like things that are placed to the side are considered deployed. But anything that is not pointed, a brand new unit of dryads, a new tree lord, you need to have those points allocated for that. And then you have that less starting, just like it is with the death. Everybody talks about the death faction, but there's other factions that have summoning, and you can bring it on board. The difference is there is mechanics where you can regenerate and restore models within a unit, not a brand new unit, but within a unit up to the maximum. That's for match play. That's a pretty good standard differentiation. And a lot of the summoning abilities for the Sylvaneth are new units. A tree lord or tree lord ancient is a new unit. Okay, a unit of dryads, new unit. So healing is a whole different ballgame. But there are not a lot, if I remember correctly, there are none of that are regenerative, restore this many models in this unit in the Sylvaneth. There's healing, certainly, but it's not going to restore models, but there's plenty of multi-wound things like the treatment, for example, that are going to be soaking up that healing. So with that in mind, any of the mechanics, like Alariel has this, for example, the Branch Wraith has it. I think the Branch Witch might also have it, and we'll look at that. If they're bringing in new units, you need to put those points aside. Otherwise, you're not using that ability, and that's fine. I think letting that go is fine. I don't even think I will utilize that for this particular faction list. where I'll put some points aside just to bring in an extra treatment, because the way summoning works, again, the way I interpret it, is it's not defined. It's amount of points. So if I want to put in 300 points to get a Tree Lord, or 400 points for a Spirit of Durthu, I can do that, and it doesn't fall under these battlefield role limitations, because it's a summoning. All right, it's not what you've deployed. Now, that's how I read it. I could read it again and see if that's the case. That's how I'm basing this off. But even with that in mind, I'm not doing that for this example. If you feel like you want to do that, I think you can go and you can get that extra monster if you want. But I don't know if that's always the best idea. I think it works with death, which we talked about. I don't think it's necessarily going to work with this. So we're going to stick with this sweet spot right here, and we're going to go and take a look at how do we build a list. But first, let's take a look at allegiances. There are some blanket abilities now that you get if you stick within a faction. Now, in the General's Handbook itself, this is not from the General's Handbook, this is from the Sylvaneth tome, the battle tome. In the General's Handbook, it has specifically, the order, destruction, death, and chaos. And if you stick within them, you have certain allegiance battle traits, command traits, and artifacts that you can call forth to put into put onto your list. Those are the easy ones, because you could take anything from various different army types within your faction. But if you stick with a specific subfaction, again, Sylvaneth is the first one that's instituting this, and a first of many, of course. You can have special ones that are specific to the Sylvaneth tome, and we're going to talk about them. Now, what are battle traits? Battle traits are blanket army-wide rules that the entire army gets, your entire list. If everything in your army that you've deployed has the specific keyword. So again, this is a Sylvaneth keyword-specific alliance. I can't take any Wanderers, which are like the old school Wood Elves. I can't take anything else from Order. Everything in order to gain these has to have a Sylvaneth keyword. Now, when you look at the breakout of the points in the General's Handbook, keep in mind that even though there's a Sylvaneth section, there is a compendium section that you can still use some of those units, and a very important war scroll that can be used with your Sylvaneth list. Not only are they legal, but the General's Handbook has them pointed. So they're just categorized separately because they came from the compendium list. So don't forget about those. And that's Treekin, and that's the Guardians of the Deepwood Battalion War Scroll. We'll get to those later. The one thing that is not there, because there's the new version Dryads, which is, an updated War Scroll. A lot of this stuff didn't change from the compendium PDF that was launched when Age of Sigmar was launched. They just updated it with the PDFs when you download them, and they updated it when you go to the app, which I highly recommend using. It's very, very easy to use when you play the game, but it's not essential. But there's new picture, new graphics. We'll see some of that stuff because I'm using those. The older units from the compendium, a lot of them carry over with the new units that have been reintroduced with the most recent release. The one thing that's missing that you do not get points is Durthu as an individual character. I was surprised at that. You don't have points for match play. You can still use the old Durthu in open play or narrative play if you really wish. Maybe he survived. Who knows? He's probably dead according to Fluff, but you can do whatever you want in your own games. You're not going to be able to use that. If you want to use a Durthu-like stat line or war scroll, you need to use the updated one for matched play. There's no point equivalent for it, and there's some subtle differences between the old Durthu and the Spirit of Durthu that's really important. One being that the old Durthu, the actual character, actually he has I think it's a command ability where he could summon additional forests. That's very important distinction between the Spirit of Durthu, which is not a unique character. You can take as many as you can afford, up to caps, up to points maximums. He doesn't have that. So we're going to leave the old character named Durthu aside, and that's unusual because there's a lot of cases, like for instance with dwarves and with other subfactions, where the old name characters are still very viable. You can play them in matched play. They're not limited by the Fluff timeline, and they are very appropriate with the keywords, and they fit well. So they're completely available and reliable. In this case, the old Durthu, Sylvaneth specific, they just didn't give him points for that. I don't know if that was an oversight or maybe to entice you to use the new version, the symbiotic relationship between these keywords. Whatever it is, I'm gonna leave that behind. But feel free to use that for narrative and open play. And hey, you can always assign your own points. Maybe even use the exact same points for Spirit to do through, because he's not that much different, if you do so wish. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about more of this. The battlefield traits that you get for having everything be Sylvaneth is as follows. First of all, it says Wildwood Groves. And when you basically, what this means is that you get a free Sylvaneth Wildwood. Again, I cannot stress this enough. I'm going to go pull it up. This is the PDF for the Sylvaneth Wildwood. This shows 3 bases, but that's a little bit excessive. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here, and I want you guys to read this if you haven't read this already. And this is the bread and butter of this army. I'm telling you, this is just as important as anything else you're putting on the field. But let's read this. Description. A Sylvaneth Wildwood is a terrain feature consisting of 2 or more citadel woods. Again, 2 or more citadel woods. Each of these bases is a citadel wood. So every Sylvaneth Wildwood that we talk about is at least 2 bases, possibly more. Now, don't be that guy. I cannot recommend this enough. I cannot stress this enough. Please don't be the guy that says for each one of these Sylvaneth woods, I'm going to make it 3 or 4 or 5 bases. You're going way overboard. I don't like that even that they did that 2 or more. I think they did that because they want to sell more bases, but that's them. It says 2 minimum. It's each one of these bases is not considered a Sylvaneth Wildwood. You need 2 Citadel wood box sets, which includes these 3 trees and this nice base structure. That's a big deal because that's a lot of territory, okay? And you have options to put one of these down after scenery is placed and before units are placed. And the limitation here is that you can, let me see what it says here. Let's see. It doesn't say anything here as far as where you place it. We'll get into that when we go back. I'm going to talk to you about some of the reasons why this is also important. There's some synergies with the units, with your army itself and the Wildwood. But let's read also what some of the things, how this might impact other elements of the game, i.e. your opponent. So these are the scenic rules that you get with these. You roll a dice for each model that makes a run or charge move across or finishing on a Sylvaneth Wildwood. So anybody who flies over these and doesn't land on them, no problem. Anybody who lands on them, even if they're flyers, you got to roll for this. Anybody who moves through it, that moves across the ground, you got to roll for this. And what happens is, on a roll of 1, the model is slain. So you got to roll for every model in a unit. This is especially scary for horde units. But it could be equally crazy if you just roll badly. If it's a monster, what if it's your leader? What if it's a unique character and you roll that 1? You need to be aware of that. It is a extremely hampering thing for your opponent, and it is just hell for your opponent if something like that happens, because arbitrarily on a roll of a 1, they could lose a very valuable object. They have to stay away from these woods. There are several caveats to this. Sylvaneth, your entire army is immune. You don't have to worry about this. You guys move freely through the trees, no issues. If it's a monster, an enemy monster that's not Sylvaneth, they are immune to it. They're just too big to have this issue occur to them. And if it's a hero, they don't have to worry about it. So characters are not going to have to worry about it. But everything else, from monstrous infantry, monstrous cavalry, monstrous flyers, standard infantry, anything else that doesn't fall under those categories has to roll if they land on or move through these woods. So the fact that you can position several of these woods onto the table means you have a zone of danger for your opponent and freedom and bonus benefits for yourself. Then there's another factor called Roused by Magic. You roll a dice whenever a spell is successfully cast within 6 inches of a Sylvaneth Wildwood. On a roll of 5 or more, the forest is roused by magical energies and attacks. Now, this is not just you casting. This is your opponent casting. So if you plant one of these Sylvaneth Wildwoods before they deploy in their deployment zone, which you probably should, at least 1 if you have more, and summoning more, you can bring more onto the table. And I will go over that. Why not? Because if they're within 6 inches and they cast a spell, if they're now you're forcing their wizards to stay away from these things even more, and even at a further distance. Because if they do that, what happens is that all units within 1 inch of the Sylvaneth Wildwood suffer die 3 mortal wounds. Okay? That's incredible. Sylvaneth are not attacked by the Wildwoods. They're immune to this effect. So if anybody is not even in the woods, but nearby, let's say you're by the woods and they're within 3 inches attacking you, you can incur for every spell that's cast on a roll 5 or better, your spells or your opponents, you can then start dishing mortal wounds to your opponents. There's many different ways you can bait your opponent. There's many ways that you can place these woods also in proximity to objectives. And for match play, scenario objectives are gigantic. I cannot stress that enough either. And that's something we can go into in another video, but go look at the scenarios. If you haven't played some of the sample games already for the summer campaign, go look at those. There's some great ones, and a lot of those are about taking and holding scenery, and the quantity of models that you bring is a big deal as well. So look that up, because that's going to be a strategy on its own. Again, I'll do another show talking about that. Okay, so we're going to come back to this, but let's take a look more at these at this. The limitation here is that you can place one Sylvaneth Wildwood just by being allegiant to Sylvaneth anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 1 inch from any other piece of scenery. Okay, this is key. Okay, this is extremely important. This is before you guys are deploying, but you can do it now. Let me see if I'm correct in that. It actually says after all pieces of scenery are set up, but before the battle begins and players choose territory or set up their armies. So nobody's put anything down. You just need to be at least 1 inch away from scenery. And the verbiage of this is going to be important, especially for you rules lawyer people out there, and there's plenty of them. This is especially important when you consider the verbiage when you try to summon more of these things later. Okay, forest spirits. The Sylvaneth are natives of the wild places of the realms, lurking in wait. Okay, let's go down to the rules, not the fluff. Instead of setting up a Sylvaneth unit or battalion, you can place it to one side and set it up as part of your army in one of the hidden enclaves. In any of your movement phases, you can transport the unit or battalion to the battlefield. When you do so, set it up so that all models are within 3 inches of a Sylvaneth Wildwood and more than 9 inches from any enemy models. This is your move for that movement phase. Now, this is important to as a distinction between some of the rules where this is in place for some battalion scrolls, and even for some formations. Some formations give you this as a bonus. The reason why this is important, and because this is a blanket rule, if you're all Sylvaneth, you can do this for everything in your army. You don't even set anything up on the board. You just have your stuff in your box, and when it comes time for your movement phase, you can bring stuff onto the board. There's no tether. It's a blanket ability for your army. The reason why this is important is because there's a way to do this with some war scrolls, like, for instance, Guardians of the Deep Wood, where you might take that as an element of an order force, where a subset of your army list in your game is Sylvaneth, and maybe it's that battalion war scroll that you brought. That's like, say, the Guardians of the Deep Wood that gives you this ability, or one of the other various ones. I think it's tree spirits. I forget what it is. We'll take a look at it. Where you can do that with just the Sylvaneth element of the army. You might have had a Sylvaneth and Stormcast combo, or Sylvaneth and High Elves or Bretonnians. However you made your list, you could have a battalion that gives you that ability that just includes your Sylvaneth for a combination order army. And get that from, say, a war scroll or whatever that you bring in that's Sylvaneth. But if you're all Sylvaneth, it's a blanket ability. Everybody can do it, which means you don't have to set shit up before the game starts. And your opponent, might opt not to take the first turn. So if you want to take the first turn, it gives you incredible advantages in that regard. You can dictate that. And if your opponent decides that, hey, all right, you want to do that, I'm just going to move through the game and get to the objectives first, and you want to put stuff down, have at it. And this is important as well, because you're taking a risk. If they do that and they take first turn, you don't have anything on the battlefield. When you do bring these guys down again, when you bring your guys in, you've got to be within 3 inches of the wood, but you also have to be you can't be close to the 9 inches from the enemy. So the enemy can hamper where you come in. So it's a trade-off. Keep this in mind. And then this is, again, navigate the realm routes. This is something that, again, is inherent in some of the War Scroll units that they have just as a standard ability, but is also, in some cases, for those that don't have it, is tied to some battalions. But if you're allegiant to Sylvaneth, you get this. And this is the ability to move through the Wildwoods. So if a Sylvaneth unit is within 3 inches of a Sylvaneth Wildwood at the start of movement phase, it can attempt to traverse the spirit paths instead of moving normally. If it does so, remove the unit from the battlefield, then set it up within 3 inches of a different Sylvaneth wildwood, more than 9 inches from an enemy model. Then roll the dice as follows. Now, the question here is this. If you're using this blanket ability, there are some benefits and some disadvantages. This chart is the allegiance element. And I'm going to get very specific and get very nitpicky about this stuff because some people are going to gloss over these rules, just read them once and then forget, or just maybe not, interpret them their own way. And you feel free to go interpret your way. But this restriction, having to roll in this chart, is only if you're allegiant to Sylvaneth, and all of your units can use this. If you use, for instance, the standard, hey, I'm not allegiant to Sylvaneth. See, I'm just allegiant to Order, and part of my army is Sylvaneth. I have some treemen that can do this. That can go through they can teleport between wildwoods. You don't have to roll on this chart. I like this chart though, and there's a number of reasons why. First of all, you roll a die 6 for each one that uses it. And hey, look, so a lot of the Sylvaneth don't move very fast, especially the big trees. They move like 5 inches mostly, except for anything that like Lariel can fly. She can fly fast, and Dryads can move 7 inches. That's not that bad. The big thing is the treemen. They're not very fast, but they can teleport from one wood to another. And in doing so, they can't move. But they could charge, they could shoot, they can cast. Well, they've already cast if they've done that because it's in the moving phase. But this is a chart that actually may have some slight disadvantages, but some serious benefits. In this case, if you roll a 1, the realm roots tangled and the unit was delayed, and as it traversed them, the unit can do nothing else for the rest of your turn. That kind of sucks. All right, you can't do nothing. It says you can do nothing for the rest of the turn, so you can't even charge. You're a shooting unit, you can't shoot. It's dangerous. It's only on a 1, but it's dangerous. There's ways to mitigate this, by the ways, but it's a risk. So you don't want to do this too much, especially for very important units. But then there's some upsides. For a 2 to 5, you can the unit navigates the spirits successfully, but cannot move further during this movement phase. Now, again, it's just during the movement phase. You can still charge, you can still shoot, you can still fight, you can still engage in combat. On a 6, however, it basically doesn't hamper your movement. You basically teleported for free. Now, it says 6+, and the reason why is because there are modifiers in certain cases here that will come into play that will adjust this. So, Tree Lord Ancients, and Spirits of Durthu that use this ability always treat the results of Tangled Roots as safe passage. They're never going to be stuck where they're frozen for the rest of that turn, such as their knowledge of the spirit paths. And you're going to see, we'll find out there's some traits, I think, if I'm correct, or some things on the War Scrolls. I've definitely seen them. We'll go discover them that can add on to these types of roles. But I wouldn't go overboard with this because you're definitely taking some chances. But it's nice to know that on a 6, you would have the option to move again. All right, so command traits. These are command traits that are given if your general is not a unique character, so not a Lariel, okay? And there's a bunch of these that you can pick, or you can roll random. I like the idea of picking. So here's Realm Walker. If your general uses the Navigate Realm Roots, add 2 to the result. So let's say, for instance, a Spirit of Durthu or a Tree Lord Ancient is your general. You're not using a Lariel as a special character because she wouldn't get this. And you assign your command trait to your general. You're always going to be safe. You're never going to have to worry about Tangled Roots. But now you're +2, meaning on a 4+, you get the pathways revealed, which means that you can teleport and you can get your normal move. That's pretty damn good. There's other ones like Gnarled Warrior, which you can add -2. You can ignore Rens unless they're -2 or better. Not bad. -2 and better is fairly rare, but when it happens, it's pretty nasty. And you can be sure that those are the types of things that are going to be targeting your general and any of your big stuff, your behemoths. Gift of Gyran, I guess it is. It heals 1 wound at the start of each of your hero phases. Die 3 if they're within 3 inches of a Sylvaneth Wildwood. Great one. Lots of elements already in place that you can do. You can heal with this army, but it's nice to get an extra one, especially if it's your general. Lord of Spites. You can reroll failed hit rolls for your general. War Singer. You can add 1 to any of your charge rolls made by friendly Sylvaneth within 10 inches of your general. Not bad. And Wisdom of the Ancients. All friendly Sylvaneth units within 10 inches of your general, add 1 to their bravery and battle shocks. Not bad. There's a couple there that I would definitely go for by default. Okay. Then we have some spell lores. Things to keep in mind, because we'll come back to this when we look at the lists and we look at the war scrolls. Number 1, Throne of Vines. And I love that this has been discussed in other videos. I love that they're utilizing some of the spells that we all knew and recognized back in 8th edition. But here's the differences, obviously, for this. These are spells that are specifically available to Sylvaneth wizards. And I do not believe this is it may be that this is only if you're combined, your entire list is all Sylvaneth keyword, your Legion, or it could be just addition. Here, I'm going to read it. Each wizard in a Sylvaneth army knows an additional spell chosen from a Deepwood spell lore, the natural mastery of life magic that allows the children of Lariel to turn the realms themselves against their foes. Pick one of the, it doesn't say anything that it has to be allegiant. But I'm guessing that this is a allegiant rule, so it might be the case. If you know differently, feel free to post that fact. So I would imagine that is the case. Okay. And I imagine that that's the case for a variety of reasons. In the General's Handbook, there are spells that are specific to order allegiance and the like. I believe that this would only unlock if you were Sylvaneth allegiant. Otherwise, you wouldn't have access if Sylvaneth were a part of an order faction, for example. Okay, so let's take a look at Throne of Vines. Throne of Vines is a casting value of 5. If it's successfully cast, you add die 3 to all future castings and unbinding rolls until they next move. Once cast, the caster cannot cast the spell again unless they have moved. So you kind of root yourself with the Throne of Vines, and you're adding die 3 to the casting rolls and any unbinding rolls until you decide to move again. So it's nice if you know that you're going to be planted in a specific place, no pun intended, I guess. But you can get some bonus and benefits. You have to use the spell in order to do so, and it does have an impact if you can cast more than one spell. But I think that only Ilariel can actually utilize more than one spell. So it could definitely be effective if it's her that's using it. I would use it if there was a Tree Lord Ancient or a Branch Wraith, for example, that's in a very central area that is going to kind of hinder your opponent, especially if it's a Branch Wraith. Or a Branch Witch, one of the small casters, as opposed to even a Tree Lord Ancient, and just make that be the target. Let them waste some time on one of these small 5-wound leader types, as opposed to some of your big stuff, to try and take that out, so that it stops unbinding their spells. You can make that a very effective target, and yeah, you'll probably lose that, but better to lose that than a Tree Lord Ancient. Okay, Regrowth. Regrowth has a casting value of 5 if successfully cast. Pick the caster or friendly unit within 18 inches. One model of the unit you picked heals die 3 wounds. If the unit that you picked was Sylvaneth, one model of the unit heals die 6 wounds. Now, it says one model, so you're not healing single wound units. If it's multiple wounds, this is a big deal. You know what this is used for? This is used to heal your Tree Lords, your Tree Lord Ancients, your Spirit of Sylvaneth, of Durthu, or Ilariel herself. So you're basically getting die 6 wounds amongst all the other potential things that you can use to heal. If you've got a very seriously wounded tree lord, you can nearly bring it back up to full. I mean, or at least substantially restore it so that it's going to last longer. Now, this is only going to cast once, because in match play, all these can only be cast one time. But it gives you so many more options. You can have everybody have this, or a couple of guys have it. You've got to pick. You can be redundant with these. It's just that you're only going to be able to cast it once. But if, say, one guy dies, one of your Treemen Ancients dies, or your Branch Wraiths dies that has regrowth, you want to have backup. All right. So I would definitely be redundant with something like that, but that's almost a given. You're going to have Tree Lords in your army. You should definitely be prepared to use this spell and have a backup, a second person, if you can afford to do so, to have it in case that one dies. Okay. Verdant Blessing, casting value of 6. If successfully cast, set up a Sylvaneth Wildwood anywhere within 18 inches of the caster that is not within 1 inch of any other model or terrain feature. Now, this is where the wording is very important. Remember, your free Wildwood is within 1 inch of terrain. Reason for that is because you're setting up before the game starts. There's no models on the table. If you haven't deployed, but terrain has been placed. In this case, this is a spell that's happening in the midst of the game, in a hero phase where you're casting spells. So your opponent can hamper this by having clusters of units, especially the large mob units, skeletons and zombies, clan rats, grots, whatever, goblins, whatever, anything that's out there that there's a lot of them, they can put down and limit this. But they can also limit it by putting anybody nearby. I mean, again, this is going to be a Sylvaneth wildwood that's going to have huge implications on where you can teleport, where your Awakening of the Woods, which can cause mortal wounds to nearby enemies, and a variety of other bonuses you get from various different war scrolls. So where you put this is important, and if you're limited by a very dense campaign, a dense game board, or lots of units on the table throughout the game as they're moving, it could limit your capability of putting them down there. But it's really important to have this in your back pocket, because what's better than sticking one of these things right next to an objective or near where your opponent's artillery batteries are, or they're hiding wizards somewhere in the back, and giving you the ability to teleport teleport nearby. You have a limitation on proximity to those units, but it still gives you the ability to, in many cases, be within shooting range or spell range, or charge range, certainly, unless you get stuck. So there's and then the Awakening of the Woods is a big factor too, because although you have to be within no closer than 1 inch from an enemy model, you still are within 3 inches if that caster casts a spell, and there's a potential chance that they could awaken the wood on a fire bed, or they're taking die 3 mortal wounds and anything else that's nearby. So it's part of your game, part of your strategy, these woods are just as much, again, I can't focus enough on this, they're just as much important as your treemen or your dryads or any of the other new models that have come out. Keep that in mind, make plenty of them, and just don't let people moan and groan about it. This is the mechanic of the army. This is how it works. So you want to have additional ones in your back pocket, and please make sure that they're not a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard. I've done that when I was just testing this out when AOS first came out, but I'm really working on making 2 layers of plywood, very thin plywood with on 1 layer with 3 holes cut out, and then I'm going to be flocking it and putting all kinds of stuff down. I have 4 of the official Citadel woods themselves. I'm going to get more. I want to have at least 10 or 12 of these things. I want to have the ability to put several of them down, summon several of them, and I think it's important to have that. If you and your group are cool with a cutout piece of felt and a bunch of trees, fine. There's only 3 of these gnarled trees that are on there, and the ability to pick them up and take them off is. I've heard comments about whether or not you can pick them up and take them. Let me tell you, these are woods that are a scenery terrain piece. They're not the actual realistic modeling manifestation of woods. You can pick up the trees. They're modeled that way for a reason. In any case, whatever your opinion about that, let's go on to the next one. Reaping. If there's a casting value of 6, your enemy units within 3 inches of the caster suffer die 3 mortal wounds. Very self-explanatory. What's nice about this is it's all enemy units. So you could get charged by a mob of several units attacking, say, your Tree Lord Ancient or even a Lariel, and every one of them, in addition to the potential for you casting an Arcane Bolt, you can pop a die 3 mortal wounds on every unit that you're focusing on, and spread out quite a few unsavable wounds aside from special saves, and do some serious damage in your hero phase. All right, Dwellers Below. Casting value is 7. You pick an enemy unit within 10 inches. Roll a dice for each model in the unit you pick. The unit suffers a mortal wound for each roll of 6. This is incredibly important for instance, the Vast Horde units. If somebody's started off with 3 units of 20 zombies and then merged them all into 1 mega unit of 60 zombies, hey, that's great. That's scary. We talked about that just recently, and I'll be doing that certainly myself. But if you do that and somebody casts this spell at you, they're rolling a die for all 60 of them, and for every 6 that you're going to lose one of those zombies. You're probably going to lose a lot of zombies. Okay, I know that odds are you'd only lose 10, but that's 10 zombies. And it could be just as crazy for any other single wound model in a unit. It's especially good in my opinion, for anything that's 20 or more models, and very effective and appropriate to use. Then there's Tree Song. Casting value is 7. You pick a Sylvaneth wildwood within 10 inches, and basically you can move it. There are limitations, however. It says you roll 2 dice, and you can move the wildwood in any direction up to that distance rolled in inches. It can't be moved within 3 inches of an enemy model or terrain features. So again, you need to know the differences between all of these things when you use them, because there's subtle differences. With the summoning of a wood, it's only within 1 inch of a model or terrain feature. Moving a wood, you can't move that's wild wood within 3 inches of an enemy. And it's really important to note, again, the 2 bases involved here. That's a lot of real estate. You might not be moving that very far because you might not be able to fit it depending on the limitations. And there's an extra limitation here. Any units that are wholly within the Sylvaneth Wildwood are also moved along with it. So, for instance, if you had your branch wraith and a unit of dryad sitting completely within the wood, tanking that wood, they're going to go move off. But if the unit is only partially within the Sylvaneth Wildwood, the Wildwood cannot be moved at all. So they have to be completely within the Wildwoods. No gaming that. No having part of the guys out, part of the guys in, or maybe hugging the terrain half in, half out. If a Sylvaneth army includes... Okay, wait. Let me make sure that was the end of that one. Yeah, it looks like that is it. So those are pretty big limitations. Okay, artifacts. Some really good artifacts. You can give only one of these artifacts to each of your heroes. It's important because if you have any battalions, you can get an extra one of these. So let's go look at them real quickly and we'll get to the rest of this. Daith's Reaper. So you pick one of this hero's melee weapons to be the Reaper, and when you're making your attacks with this weapon, any wounds of 6 or more have a rend characteristic of -4. That's pretty sweet when you have, especially if you have a weapon that's not doesn't have a really good rend. I think you're spending a lot to get an extra 2 rend. It effectively wipes an armor save out, unless it's just a crazy armor save, Mystic Shield with terrain bonuses and whatnot. And something to keep in mind, by the way, we just want to go back to those Wildwoods. If you're on the Wildwoods, you get a +1 to your regular standard save, unless you're a monster. Let's remember that when we're talking about the other units when we get to those. All right, the Oaken Armor. Making a Reaper, look, if you give it to like a Spirit of Durthu, which unwounded does like 6 wounds, and or probably already I think has like a -2. That's going to be a big deal. We'll take a look at that and try to remember that. The Oaken Armor. You add 1 to any of your saves for this hero. Really good if it's this Tree Lord or Tree Lord Ancient or a Spirit of Durthu. They have a base 3+ save. They cannot benefit from terrain bonuses for their save. So this is a way to make them go from that 3 up to a 2 up. Now you wouldn't want to waste a Mystic Shield on that because the rule of 1 means that anything that rolls a 1 fails. So, but that's a nice way to have a standard 2 up to fight against any enemy rends. Okay, so let's hide that. Okay, the Briar Sheath. It subtracts 1 from all hit rolls made against the Briar Sheath's bearer. I love this one. There's a number of different things that could happen, for instance, with a character that could impact the subtraction of -1 to your opponents. Some of them we'll talk about when we get to Dryads, but with Tree Lords specifically, all the different Tree Lords have this ability to stomp the ground, and if on a 4 or more, enemy units will be -1 to hit them, or -1 to hit in general. And this is a way that if they want to now hit that Tree Lord, it's subtract 1 from all the hit rolls. The crazy thing is that the stomp is only a melee. This can be also for shooting. So it doesn't say in melee range. It says all to hit rolls. So the Briar Sheath has some magical aura that covers any type of hits. That's pretty good. It makes it kind of tough to hurt these guys outside of mortal wounds and various different spell abilities because if you get them to 2+ armor, or if you can get them where they're like -1 or -2 to be hit, that's crazy. That's pretty damn good for these models, and it's important because they're one of your biggest value and biggest targets on the battlefield. Very important to stress: you cannot have more than one of these on any of your unnamed standard, generic characters. Seed of Rebirth. The first time the bearer of this artifact loses its last wound, it immediately heals die 3 wounds. So you have anywhere from 1 to 3 extra wounds added onto your profile is essentially what it is. You only get it the 1 time. Wraithstone, you subtract 1 from the bravery of all enemy units within 10 inches of the bearer in the battle shock phase. Not bad. I wouldn't really default to this. It's very situational. There's plenty of others that I think are better. And the Glamour Weave, roll a dice each time the bearer suffers an unsaved wound or mortal wound. On a roll of 6, the wound is ignored. It's only a 6. It's only for the bear, and there are other things I would rather use here, like the Briar Sheath, perhaps the Oaken Armor, or the Reaper. I think that the first 4 of these are no brainer. It's a toss up depending on what your preference is. Maybe if you get more than one, you use different ones for different guys. I think the last 2, 5 and 6, not so much. I wouldn't pick those personally. All right. Other treasures. Okay, any Sylvaneth wizard can be given an arcane treasure. And again, I guess it's questionable whether or not this is for Sylvaneth that's part of a greater like order army list, or if it's only specific. Again, if you have an opinion about that, feel free to post it below. I'd be happy to hear it. It just seems like all this is all Legion stuff. So it just seems like it would be if you're all Sylvaneth. Okay, 8 Corner of the Ages. Once per game, in your hero phase, you set up a new Sylvaneth wildwood anywhere within 5 inches of the bearer. The wood cannot be set up within an inch of any other models or terrain features. This is only for wizards. Now, this is an important distinction. The other ones you could put and give to a standard tree lord, but that's these artifacts here. But for a wizard, here's another opportunity where you can plant down a Sylvaneth wildwood. So you have a spell that any of these guys can have. You have a magical item that any of these guys can have. So you could start off with now the one for the army, summon 2 more in this fashion, and you'll see there's several other ways you could bring in these wildwoods. You could just if the board is sparsely populated, which I don't know if you've gone to a lot of tournaments as a viewer. I know I've gone to a fair good number of them, and sometimes there's just not a lot of terrain. There's like 1 feature, maybe 2 features in each quadrant of the board. And it could be fairly sparse. I like going to games where in 8th edition that was necessary. There's a lot of block units, large block units, and it was just important. This is a skirmish game, so it might also be that people go crazy dense, and go density-wise, which would really hamper the ability to place these wildwoods. But they also could be a situation where they don't give, it's just they only have so much terrain, and if they're looking to create these events, they're only putting maybe 4 or 6 features on the table at most. You may have complete freedom to put as many of these things down as you have the ability to do so. That would be wonderful, and it would really, really give you a tremendous amount of, and you can drink, I said tremendous, an amazing amount of power in controlling the board with that. So definitely something to consider. And you can give this to a branch wraith or a branch witch. It doesn't have to be the tree lord ancient. Warsong staff. The bearer knows the tree song spell in addition to any spells they know. So they basically get an extra spell, which is nice. Once per game for the Moonstone of the Hidden Ways, instead of moving the bearer in the movement phase, remove them from the battlefield and place them anywhere that is more than 4 inches away from enemy models. Great. Teleportation. That is amazing. It's a once per game thing. But, if you wanted to take that Spirit of Death, I don't think the Spirit of Death is a wizard. I'll have to make sure. But, could be Tree Lord Ancient. And you can place them in a completely different spot. This is not hampered by the traveling, teleporting around the table through the wildwoods. So that's a big deal as well. Ranu's Lemon Tiri. Add 1 to all casting rolls made by the bearer. If they attempt to cast a spell from the Deepwood spell lore, add 2 to the roll. That's pretty good. Not bad. Definitely worthwhile. Hagbane's Spate. These rare forest spite. Spites are deadly to the sorceress foes of the Sylvaneth. Once per game, instead of attempting to unbind a spell, the bearer can send forth this item, the Hagbane's Spite, to attack the caster. So, in other words, you don't bind, but instead of doing that, you attack the caster. You let the spell go through. After resolving the spell's effects, the caster immediately suffers die 3 mortal wounds. Huge! What if that spellcaster's on their last leg? Only a couple of wounds left. Yeah, you let them get their spell off, and that could be detrimental, but it could be more important to remove that guy from the battlefield. So, that's not bad. I like that. I like that. Yeah, it's a trade-off. But it could really come into play. It could also be very situational. The Silverwood Circlet adds 6 inches to the minimum range of every spell that the wearer knows. God, if only Alariel could use that. But still, you use this on a Tree Lord Ancient, or even one of the small ones, the Branch Wraith or Branch Wraith. You could sit them further back and get an extra 6 inches to that to your spell casting range. Not bad. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these real quickly. This is the Forest Folk Battalion scroll, and it includes 1 Branch Wraith and 3 units of Dryads, which are a minimum of 10. The War Scroll obviously says you can do, you can go 5, but you're paying for 10. You might as well take 10 when it comes to points. This essentially gives you the ability to move along the spirit paths from Sylvaneth Wildwood to Sylvaneth Wildwood. And the difference here is that if you didn't have I wouldn't use this in any way in a Sylvaneth only list, because you already get this. This gives you the ability to use it if this was a element part of a larger order list that includes some Sylvaneth. So let's say you only wanted to take a branch with and three units of Dryads in addition to any other order units you wanted to take. You could then have these guys maneuver around the table from Wildwoods. You better take. You won't be able to get a default guaranteed Sylvaneth Wildwood forest, so you better have a spell or some other element that allows you to place one. Otherwise, it's kind of a waste. But that's something you might want to consider. One other nice thing about having this is if you can qualify the battalion, and this is pretty cheap. We'll see points with this later. You can take an extra artifact into your army. So that's something to consider as well. Okay, so this is a Sylvaneth Forest, Sylvaneth Spirit Wargrove. All right, so this is a Tree Lord, Ancient, 2 Tree Lords, a Branch Wraith, and 3 units of Dryads. There's others I would use instead of this, but there's some nice stuff that you can do with this. One is you have that Hidden Sanctuaries ability. So again, this is only really makes sense if it's if it's a subset of a larger order list. That's not all Sylvaneth. And so you can have that Hidden Sanctuaries ability where you can bring these guys in. And it has this Alariel's Blessing. So all the wizards in this battalion, so it would be the Tree Lord Ancient and the Branch Wraith, know this spell where on a casting value of 5, you can pick a model and heal it, die 3 wounds. Really good and important for the Tree Lords and the Tree Lord Ancient more than anything else. But not bad. Not bad at all. You're only going to be able to cast this once, but in addition to all the other healing, this might work out really nicely. So then there's this Free Spirits one. You get 1 Spirit of Dirthu and 3 units of Kurnoth Hunters. These are the either halberdier or 2-handed sword wielding or archers. And that's not a lot. Again, this is really kind of effective as a subset. The Free Spirits move without delay to fill Ariel's will. In your hero phase, you pick an enemy unit or terrain feature and then move each unit from the Free Spirits as though it were the movement phase. They cannot run. They must end their movement closer to the chosen unit or terrain feature. They must end their move to the chosen unit or terrain feature than they were before they moved. I don't know if I'm reading that wrong or whatever. This is pretty interesting. You can pick either an enemy unit or an terrain and then move each unit from the. Okay, so you get a free move. That's it. That's really all it is. But it's nice. You can dictate a enemy unit or terrain feature, and you get a free move in the hero phase towards that target. And then when the movement phase comes, you can move and then you can charge. So it just means that you can really traverse across the battlefield much faster. So that would be nice to take if you can qualify for it as part of maybe your greater Sylvaneth force to get that extra special ability for this. Plus you get another artifact. Or as a subset, if this is all you're bringing as part of a greater order force, not bad at all. These guys will move pretty quickly. Now the Tree Lord, the Spirit of Duther only moves 5 inches, but the other guys, I think they're like 6 or 7. We'll take a look when we get to them. This is the one that I love the most. I use this one. This one is part of the compendium list. It's pointed in the General's Handbook. It's just in that area, and it's only a Sylvaneth, and there's nothing else in the compendium area other than Shriekin that qualify for this. But this one is beyond crazy because if you combine it with all the other elements of how you can get Sylvaneth Wildwoods, you can now get more of them. So what is included in a Guardians of the Deepwood? This is a 100-point battalion list, war scroll, which I think is the most expensive of all of them. And you need to have 3 Tree Lords or Tree Lord Ancients, any combination, 2 units of Dryads, and 2 Sylvaneth Wildwoods. Now, a Tree Lord or Tree Lord Ancient, a Spirit of Dirthu, I believe, is that. We'll have to take a look when we see that. I'm going to go see if I can pull that up real quickly to make sure. We're going to go take a look at this and see if they have the keyword for it. The keyword, no, you cannot have a Spirit of Dirthu be part of this battalion. Very important. We'll have to see if how I built one of my later lists if I did that, because I'll have to change it. So it has to be a Tree Lord or a Tree Lord Ancient. You cannot have a Spirit of Duthu as part of this. So you need 3 of them, 2 units of Dryads, and you get 2 Sylvaneth Wildwoods as part of your battalion bonus. Really important. Now, you could have this as, again, part of a subset of an order list where this is just part of it is Sylvaneth, and that's what these guys are. You get the Forest Spirits thing where you can have all these guys from this battalion off the board and then teleport on, next to or inside of this Wildwood. But it's moot. It's kind of redundant if your entire force is Sylvaneth again, because you already get that ability. The Sacred Groves one, however, this battalion, Sylvaneth Wildwoods, will sit up on the battlefield after all other pieces of scenery are set up. But before the battle begins, and either side sets up their armies. You can place them anywhere on the battlefield. Let me stress that last line. You can place them anywhere on the battlefield. So if you take the Guardians of the Deep Wood, the 2 Sylvaneth Wildwood, that you are taking, okay, that you are picking, are not limited by proximity. It's before deployment of your enemy's forces. It is after scenery is placed. Now, I would argue that you cannot place it on top of other scenery, but that's not what it says. So you can argue yourselves whether or not you think that's being, douchebaggy or not. I kind of feel, in the spirit of the game, in the spirit of fair play, don't stack this on top of something else. Don't put it on top of the base of another piece of scenery. But that doesn't mean that you can't hug it right next to another piece of scenery. These 2 Wildwood from the Guardians of the Deep Wood, deployed before your forces are deployed at the beginning of the game, can be anywhere where there's no scenery. And if you really want to stretch the interpretation, they can be anywhere. Either way, you get 2 more, which means 4 more bases. So you can start with 6 of these bases if you're a Sylvaneth-specific army, and then that doesn't even take into consideration all the other ways that you can bring more of these woods onto the battlefield. Okay, so moving on. I love this one just because you could start with so much, and really, unless it's a crazy dense amount of terrain in the game, you'll get them on the battlefield. And then they'll be things you can impact. I would place them at various different quadrants, one in the center, one in your opponent's deployment zone, and one on one of the board edges, and just be able to utilize those. You're going to really, you already now can force your opponent to make decisions as opposed to having free reign. Okay, Household. This is a nice one as, again, it's a good subset. It's a Tree Lord, a Branch Witch, and 1 unit of Tree Revenants. Not a lot, not very expensive. You can use it if you want to take multiple battalion scrolls and all Sylvaneth list, but it makes it pretty easy to go and add this as part of a greater order force. Discipline of the Ages. The way it works is enemy units cannot choose to retreat if they're within 3 inches of a household unit. In addition, units from the battalion add 1 to their bravery and battle shock if they're within 3 inches of an enemy unit. Not a great thing. It's nothing incredible. It does prevent some running away. It does prevent some units that maybe have some good retreat abilities that, like for instance, one thing comes to mind is like a gyro bomber. You can retreat. You can even run on retreat, by the way, where you can retreat over models and still drop those bombs, which is mortal wounds, which is nice. You can prevent somebody from doing that. They can, if they're stuck in combat, if they're within 3 inches of you, and they're in effectively combat range, they can retreat out of combat, and they have to wind up further away as part of the default rules than I think 5 inches from an enemy. I forget. But if you can prevent them from retreating, they ain't going anywhere, and you can mess with them. And if you're on the better, if you have more forces engaged with that unit or close enough proximity to get into the combat round, the combat turn to ruin them, and this is a very important piece that's maybe on its last leg or very diminished, you can prevent them from getting away from you. So that's pretty good. And then the extra battle shock's nice, not bad. I think it could be one of those. It's a ruinous thing. You're messing with your opponent. It's actually a better word is spoiler. This is like a spoiler war scroll where you can prevent your opponent from actually doing something that might be very effective and important and strategically important in the game. Okay. Lords of the Clan. I like this one because where in the other one you need to have a Tree Lord Ancient or Tree Lords, 3 of them for the Guardians of the Deep Wood. This is one where you get an extra abilities for, let's say, for instance, if you have 3 Tree Lords on the table and you want this battalion to be your battalion, or as 3 of your behemoths as part of a greater order force, for example. You have to have at least 1 Tree Lord Ancient. This one can be pretty large, so I guess this scales up for very large games. You could have up to 1 to 3 Tree Lord Ancients in addition, and 1 to 3 Tree Lords in addition. Now, in some games with the caps, for behemoths, because all of these guys are behemoths, you're not going to be able to take all of them. That's fine. You can take maximum of, 4 or 5 in a 2,000-point game. I think it's 5 in a 2,500-point game. It's 4 in a 2,000-point game. Okay, so you're not going to take all of them. For larger games, you can. Okay, so you can have a whole, this is where you can have the marching of the Ents. But most of the time, I think you're going to have your 3 Tree Lords or Tree Lord Ancients, not a Spirit of Durthu, and you can get the bonuses from the Lords of the Clan. The leaders of the Sylvaneth, I'm not going to read those, the fluff. All right. So in the hero phase, the head of the clan, you have to pick which one of them. That's one of the Tree Lord Ancients. You roll a dice for each enemy within 10 inches. And this is kind of a chorus that they're all singing. And you can add 1 to the result for each model from this battalion, each of the other guys that are in this battalion, the big Tree Lords or Tree Lord Ancients, that are also within 10 inches of an enemy being rolled for. So you're doing it for multiple units if they're within there. You're doing it for each of the enemy units. And the more of these guys that are within 10 inches, you get a +1. If the result is 6 to 9, that enemy unit suffers die 3 mortal wounds. If the result is 10 or more, the unit suffers die 6 mortal wounds. Not bad, just for being close by. And of course, your opponent's probably going to try and close with these guys. And so that's pretty good. I mean, yeah, you could roll pretty crappy, 1, 2, or 3, whatever. But with if you roll anywhere within 6 to 9, that's great. And it's just a default. It's it's in the hero phase. Okay, so you just get it as a freebie for paying for this and for having these guys on the table. I would say not bad, not a bad thing to have at all. Okay, so we looked over the force organization chart. This is a picture with some of the points listed. I'm going to go pop off of that, and we're going to go to the list. Oh, actually, you know what? Before I do that, let's go take a look at some of these war scrolls. All right, I just want to go and show you some of the abilities that we see, and other shows, like for instance, the Tactica Tuesday. Definitely go look at James Squire and Paul Conti. They did one. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the phase. They did one just this morning. They had a really good show. I already watched it. But they talk about a lot of this stuff already. I'm not going to go into too much detail about Ilariel. I do think they forgot a bunch of things about some of the spells that she can cast that would have had a huge impact on her combat with the Maw Crusher special character. But still, she's a behemoth. She's a beast in many ways. But look, she's her greatest capabilities are not just her physical powers. So without just to talk about some of the things that she can do, she can summon other units. Now, there's a question. I don't know if it's how people feel about this. The Soul or more Amphore, I believe it's called. These might be points that you might have to spend in a pool, put to the side to bring in additional units. So, for instance, on a roll of 1 to 3, she can heal all models with their Sylvaneth within 30 inches, die 3 wounds. That's the best of the abilities, in my opinion. But there's a chance that she might be able to summon die 6 Dryads or die 6 Tree Revenants, or if you roll a 6, a Tree Lord. And that's great. That's a great one. Those are amazing, amazing possibilities. But I think for the units, they would fall under the summoning rules for match play, where you have to put those points aside in order to do that. That being said, if that's the case, if that's how severe that rule is, and that's how I feel it is, I don't feel that any of these abilities for unique or special characters or any characters that can bring things in, like Neferata, when she kills something, she has a potential chance to bring in a vampire onto the table. Any of those summoning things fall under the blanket rule for summoning. If it's not a restoration of a unit up to its maximum, it needs to be a point pool for the summoning and put to the side. I wouldn't even care. I wouldn't care about putting points aside for her to summon this stuff up. I would like the ability to heal, even if it's a single wound model unit like a Dryad. I still get 1 wound, and if it's a Branch Wraith or one of the big monstrous Tree Lord types, they get die 3 wounds. I love that, and it's not a spell. It's in the hero phase. It's not part of her magic. She can cast 3 spells. She can unbind 3 spells. She has the Metamorphosis ability, which it's a casting value of 5 in addition to all of other spells and any other spells from the Allegiance list. You pick an enemy unit within 16 inches and roll a number of dice equal to the result of the casting roll. So, anywhere from 2 to 12. If it's 6, you roll 6 dice. For each roll of 4 or more, the unit suffers a mortal wound. If the last model of the unit is slain, you can set up a Sylvaneth Wildwood in its place. None of the woods can be within 1 inch of any other models or terrain features. So, again, 1 inch requirement. But if you kill off a unit, it could be a character. It could be a unit with only a few models left. It could be a character with only a couple of wounds left. If you kill it, you get another free wood. That's a magical ability, not a bad magical ability. And then her command ability, which is okay. It's all right. When she uses this ability once per battle, you can reroll fail wound rolls made for all Sylvaneth models into your next hero phase. It's only once per battle, not a great command ability, nothing to go crazy about. She's pretty powerful, and I'm not even going to talk about her physical attributes. You can take a look at the scroll and see for yourself. All right. Branch Wraiths. We know Branch Wraiths. The most important thing about them is that they're wizards, but they also can summon more Dryads. Again, you've got to allocate the points to use it. I wouldn't go crazy about that. The new Branch Witches. Again, wizards, just like Branch Wraiths, but they have just a little bit of a goodness to them. They get some additional attacks. It's always possible. You can always give this one the Ren -4. It does 2 wounds, but the 2 attacks. It could be one of those under the radar models. It's 1 model. It's not a lot of wounds. They might be looking at other stuff and come sneaks up on somebody and just rips them a new asshole. You can get a couple attacks in there and just negate their entire armor. A little bit of a stretch, though. I wouldn't necessarily do that. But yeah, if you want to be crafty, go ahead. The important thing about this one is that it has the Unleash Spites ability, which is kind of like a Drika's ability, but a little bit toned down, where you can roll dice, and on a 6, you can incur mortal wounds on an opponent. I think it's based on for each enemy unit within 9 inches, when you cast this, you roll as many dice as the result of the casting roll, and on a roll of 6, for each of those rolls that you make, and again, you're doing it to each unit within range, they're taking a mortal wound. Not a bad ability, but it's, again, mortal wounds. Can't sniff at that. All right. Dryads. These are important because, and understand that when I show you my list, that there's reasons why I made the list the way they were. Dryads, they're 1 wound models. They're pretty fast moving. They don't have great armor. They're 5 armor, 5 up saves. They get 2 attacks, 4 up, 4 up, no rend, and 1 point of damage. So why are they important? First of all, they're really important when it comes to things like obtaining objectives, which are going to be very important in tournaments when it comes to the scenarios, more so than we've seen before. And they have a couple of abilities that are important because of their numbers that you take of them in, and because of the proximity to Sylvaneth Wildwood. The first one being that you have the Blessings of the Forest. So you subtract 1 from all hit rolls made against this unit if they're within 3 inches of a Sylvaneth Wildwood. This is important if there is a Tree Lord around and they get a chance within range to do a stomp. This is important because it stacks. You get a stomp where somebody will be -1 to hit melee, and then if they're with these guys are there within 3 inches of a Sylvaneth Wildwood, just one guy from the battalion, by the way, it doesn't have to be the entire unit. 1 guy on the tail end of the battalion, you make a teardrop formation of these guys, and you get this. And now it's not, they don't have the greatest armor, but hey, they've got the ability to be -1 to hit. That's Nurgle. I mean, that's a Nurgle-like effect. That's great. The Enrapturing Song. In your own combat phase, and this is important, it's only in your own combat phase, you add 1 to unit hit rolls for attacks made by this unit against the Enraptured in that combat phase. So you can pick 1 unit that you're now able to roll, you're instead of 4+, you're 3+ to hit them. And then the Impenetrable Thicket. This is where the quantity is important, and we'll get to this when we go to list building. If you have at least 12 models in the unit, it didn't really matter in open play, or it won't matter in narrative, but it's going to matter in match play. You add 1 to your save, going from a 5 up to a 4 up, if there are at least 12 models. So what you want to do is you want to have more than 12, of course, a padding of more than 12, so that potentially, if you lose a few, you can still gain this ability. It gives you a threshold, just in case some get shot off or attacked. The problem is that they're only bought in units of 10, so you're going to be doing either 10 or 20. And it's your choice on whether you want to spend the extra points to get this 1 extra ability. It's nice, though. Consider this. These guys are going to be -1 to be hit if they're near a Sylvaneth Wildwood. They're a 5-up save. If every one of them are hugging the perimeter of a Wildwood, just sticking across halfway in, halfway out, or even fully in, they're going to get another +1 save because they're not monsters. So they'll go to a 4-up. And if they're at least 12, let's say you get 20 of them in each one of these units, gives you a good amount. Now they're up from 4-up, they go to 3-up. That's a 3-up save for all 10 of these dryads, or 20 was really the way it is because you want to get 20 of them. While they're touching, everybody in the unit's touching the wood, and because they're on terrain, they're getting an extra one. That's 3-up. 3-up saves. That's pretty fucking good. Okay, for a standard rank and file troop. You have 20 of these guys. They can command from defensive point. They can screen your tree lords, screen Lariel, protect a piece of terrain that is a scenario objective. That's not bad. I mean, you're spending points to get this, guys, and gals. But it's still you can find a way to make that work. And that 3-up, guess what? Mystic Shield. Now they're a 2-up. You have 20 of these dryads, -1 to be hit, and you can have them at 2-up. All right, yeah. Ones always fail, but you can have them at 2-up. I like that. Other than mortal wounds, that's pretty freaking great. And we haven't even talked about the fact that the Wildwoods, if anybody tries to charge through the Wildwoods to get to them, on a roll of 1, the models are slain. So yeah, the Dryads are not that great, but these are the guys. These are your bread and butter in a lot of ways for the army. There's a lot. They're battle line units. I would definitely have at least one good solid unit of these. Maybe even make my entire battle line core of Dryads. I have 35. I think I want more. Okay, so let's take a look at Dryka. People have been talking about Dryka left and right. She is a beast in hand-to-hand combat. She is a mini monster with 10 wounds as opposed to the 12 plus that we see, or 16 from Malarial. I'm just going to throw a couple things in here. She is a wizard. She can cast and unbind 1 spell, which is always nice. She also has this Primal Terror. What happens is if she casts it at 6, an enemy unit within 10 inches roll, you add 2 to the result for each point by which you exceed the highest bravery in that unit suffers a mortal wound. This is extremely important for this and her ability with her swarm can lay waste to horde units. She is a horde unit wrecking machine. She's okay in other factors, but her biggest thing on the battlefield is just removing single wound bodies. So yes, that's a big deal. That is definitely a big deal. So take a look at her and consider her for your army list. Okay, so Kornoth Hunters. These are, I believe, your archers. They have great bows, or you can take them with either great swords, scythes, and vicious claws. Let's see. And they have nice range with those bows, 30 inches. They do some pretty good rending. All of them do rending, except for their standard claws. Definitely something to consider, especially if you use the battalion that has the 1 tree lord, or the Spirit of Duthu, and 3 of these units. They come 3 each. Worthy to take. For the points, gives you some range capability, and they are no slouch when it comes to physical combat. In melee, they have 5 wounds each and a 4-up save, not bad. And they get the re-rolling of reroll failed saves if they're let's see, they sprout thicket. Until the end of the turn, they cannot move except to pile in 1 inch, but you can reroll failed saves. That's not bad. Okay, so let's move on to the next unit. Spirit of Duthu. James and Paul went over this earlier today. I kind of showed how useful they are. They're basically like old Duthu, but without the ability to, as a command ability, just plop down new woods. You don't need it. You don't need the old Duthu. Use this guy. There's so many ways to plop down more Sylvaneth Wildwoods with the new Sylvaneth. You don't need that, but he gets other things as well. He gets this Champion of the Everqueen's Will, which means that if he's all friendly units within 8 inches of any Spirits of Duthu, add 1 to the bravery. That's nice. You should have 1 of these guys on the table. They're beasts in melee combat. Starting off on wounded, they do 6 wounds, and then it goes down to die 6 wounds, and you have to go all the way down to their last few wounds before it goes to die 3. Yeah, they're butch. They'll mow through things. You also have this Their Guardian Sword, if you're next to within 3 inches of a Sylvaneth Wildwood, they get die 3 extra attacks on top of their initial attacks. So you can get anywhere from 4 to 6 attacks on that Guardian Sword, which just will hack the daylights out of things. And it's a -2 rend. And their characters, you can give them an artifact. They have a Verdant Blast. You can add 2 to your roll to hit, but you have to take some mortal wounds to do so. But you know what? With all the things that can heal, you might as well do it. I mean, you might as well take a chance once in a while. It could be a time where you want to make sure that hits. It's 15-inch range. You want that thing to hit. So you might want to pop that and take a few wounds yourself. And if not, it's still pretty nice. And then you have the Solemn Guardian. So what happens is if an attack targets a friendly Sylvaneth hero within 6 inches of the Spirit of Durthu, and it causes a wound, you roll a die. On a 4 or more, the wound is inflicted on the Spirit of Durthu instead. So you're a guardian. You're a bodyguard. Put that guy, if you have Valerial, stick him next to Valerial. All right? you within 6 inches of Valerial's got an extra 4+ save in addition to whatever else she's got. All wounds go to the Spirit of Durthu, and if it doesn't die, you heal it back up later. If you don't have Valerial and say you have your Lord is your general is a Tree Lord Ancient, great. That's wonderful. Protect your Tree Lord Ancient. This is a great way to diffuse, and because the Tree Lord Ancient is important because they might have the healing spell. So you want to defer it over to the Spirit of Durthu. I'm all about that. I would definitely use that. Let's see, the Tree Lord Ancient. This is the one I wanted to get to. We talked about all the different things that are different now about, this guy has Awakening of the Wood, which, you cast the spell and any enemy units within 3 inches take die 3 mortal wounds, except for the Sylvaneth. Very important. They have the Spirit Path ability. These guys have Impale. If you really can wheel somebody down to very few wounds, you might slay them outright, which is nice. They have the Ground Shaking Stomp, which I don't know if it stacks. That's an argument that I've seen and heard. The way it works is with the Ground Shaking Stomp is before combat starts, you roll a die for every unit that's within 3 inches of the model before combat starts at all. You don't even have to be within combat with the Tree Lord Ancient, but any enemy unit, not your own, you can be screened by, say, Dryads. On a 4 or more, that unit's knocked to the ground. The effect is that they subtract 1 to their to hit rolls, which again, it's nice. You have those Dryads screening you. Now they're -2 to be hit. It's great. Okay. I've heard people argue that there's nothing that says that this doesn't stack. And my personal opinion is let's not push that. Yeah, if you have 3 Tree Lords and they all stomp, are you going to be -1 if you roll 4 up on all of them? I think it's you get 3, a chance for each one of them for every unit within range to then be -1. I don't think it stacks. But do what you want. I'd rather be more conservative in that interpretation. So read it as you will. I won't be playing it that way. If you play that way, just remember you want to keep playing people. You want them to want to play you. We're already doing enough awful stuff when it comes to these woods and the things that it can do. So just be mindful of that. And it can travel through the spirit paths. But already it has that ability. But again, even without the allegiance thing, if it was a subset of another order unit, it would be able to travel from one Sylvaneth Wildwood to another. There are Tree Lords are really just the more ranged version. They really just have just the vanilla abilities, but they're pretty butch, but they can shoot pretty well. I like that. Tree Revenants, these, I forget if these are the ones that are that can be Battalion if you're all Sylvaneth. I think that these are the ones that are. They're like the half spirit, half ghostly creatures. And they can move through the way pipes, so they don't have to worry about the Battalion abilities that allow you to do that. And so that's all good. Yeah, there's 5 of them. Yeah, I think that's what these guys are. Very worthy if you're all Sylvaneth. If you want to have, for instance, these guys to be your battle line. Let's go to my list. Why not? The list here. We're going to go and pull that up. I hope everyone can see this. All right. So with my list here, this is how I'll do it. There we go. Just so we have a nice background there. Okay. This is the first list. Now, again, I'm building this up for 2,000 points. Everything that's bold here is, and I hope everybody can see it. I'm going to try and Let's see if we can make it a little bigger. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we'll do this. Okay. So hopefully everybody can see this now. This is my one of two lists I'm going to share with you. Make your own, have fun, go crazy, but this is just some ideas. 2 units of dryads, 10 each. I am giving up the ability, unfortunately, because of the way it's pointed. You could take 20 in a unit, have at it. 20 in a unit of dryads if you want to spend the points and give them the extra padding to get that boost for an armor for your regular standard save of +1 to have 12 or more. But to get that, in some cases that's just not, you can't fit that. So I would take 2 units and leave them as individuals, lose the extra +1 to my armor save for the quantity and not worry about it too. And that's 2 of my battalion core battle line core requirements. My third is a unit of 5 tree revenants, because they're a little more butch. They have some different abilities so that your opponent has to think, try to change some of their tactics. I don't have any problem with that kind of stuff. Tree revenants are only 1 wound. They still at a 5 up. They move a little slower, so you might. I think they do a little bit better because they have a rend. One of their abilities does 2 damage instead of 1, so they're going to do a little bit better in combat than a dryad will. And there's only 5 of them, but you could make an argument certainly to go and instead of taking the extra unit of tree revenants, take 3 units of dryads instead, and still make this a 2,000 point list. It's up to you. I don't have any tree revenants yet, so this is probably the kind of list I would run. This is an Alarial list for 2,000 points. Obviously, if we go to 2,500, we're gonna have a lot more flex. But this is what I'm building right now with what I have, and I have Alarial, and I have everything else here. So I'm probably gonna go down this road. Okay, 3 units of dryads. Then we have Alarial at 620, a lot of points, but she's worth it. 1 Spirit of Durthu, she is the bodyguard for Alarial. An additional caster in the Tree Lord Ancient, 300 points. And I'm taking the Lords of the Clan. So just to go back to the Lords of the Clan, your Lords of the Clan, within range, in the hero phase, you have a chance to dish out die 3 mortal wounds. Anything that gives you mortal wounds, guys, is a big deal. You could do a lot of damage. And people are going to come after these Tree Lords. They're definitely going to. So you can take the Lords of the Clan. Actually, I got to take that back. You cannot take Lords of the Clan with this. I've just realized I have 1 Spirit of Durthu, 1 Ancient, and 1 Tree Lord. I'm down 1. I can't use Spirit of Durthu. So I'm going to have to change that up. So I'm going to have to go and take those 60 points and find another place for them. So it could be potentially that you don't take you take maybe 2 Tree Lord Ancients and no Tree Lords. Yeah, why not? 2 casters. Why not? That'll work. And you can still get the you won't have any additional battalions. This will be on a Alarial list. I'll tweak this just to give you an idea. You have a Alarial, a Tree Lord, a Spirit of Durthu, 2 Tree Lord Ancients for additional casting and Tree Lord wonderfulness, and 3 units of Dryads. That could be your army. That's a 2,000 point list. Let's take a look at a list without Alarial. Okay, this is my Guardians of the Deepwood list. Okay, and the reason why this is legal is because I've got enough here that qualify for the Guardians of Deepwood in addition to a Spirit of Durthu. So in a 2,000 point list, you can have up to 6 leaders, but you can only have up to 4 behemoths. So I have 2, 3, 4, 5 leaders, but only 2, 3, 4 behemoths. I qualify. This is legal. Here I have 3 units of Dryads. So, not 3 units. I've taken Dryads 3 times, but I'll break them out in different ways. I've taken 2 times I bought the Tree Revenants at 5 each. That's my 1 unit of 10 Tree Revenants. I could totally not bother with that. I could forget about these guys and take a whole bunch more Tree Revenants, but Dryads, I don't have them. I have 35 Dryads. So I can take 30 Dryads, 10 apiece, and you know what I do with them? These guys are part of my battle line, so I have 10 Tree Revenants. I have 30 Dryads. All right, so I'm buying them in groups of 10. I can't break out half of them into one and half of them into the other. I guess I could, but I got to pay. Then I have to pay 4 times. So for 3, I'm going to have 1 unit of 20 Dryads. They're going to have the bonus armor class. They're going to have the bonus save, the +1 for being over 12. And then I have another unit of 10 Dryads, which is, again, not going to have the bonus for regular saves. But again, that's my 3 battle line units. 1 unit of 20 Dryads, 1 unit of 10 Dryads, 1 unit of 10 Tree Revenants, but paid for twice. Then, again, as I said, 2 Tree Lords, all right? They're pretty good on range. They don't have any spell casting ability. They can still stomp, but they have a nice ranged ability with their roots. 1 Branch Wraith for extra spell casting. Can summon Dryads, but only if it's, if you say the points. You can't. This is a straight up 2,000 point list. Spirit of Durthu is going to go bodyguard my general, which is this Tree Lord Ancient. And I'm going to take the Guardians of the Deepwood, and it looks like I also have the Household. So the Guardians of the Deepwood, I'm going to pull that up just so you can see it once again. The reason why I like this list is because I get 1 Wildwood to start, 2 from the Guardians of the Deepwood. So I'm starting with 6 bases of Citadel Woods, 3 of the Sylvaneth Wildwoods. I've got the Guardians of the Deepwood that allows me to get those extra bases. It qualifies because Tree Lord Ancient and 2 Tree Lords allows me to do that. And let's see if I didn't screw this up. The Household, well, I think I might have screwed this up. Yeah, I can't do it. I took a branch. I was going to take a Branch Witch instead. Yes, we're going to do this on the fly. The Household requires, let's see, I've got a Tree Lord Ancient. Yeah, I can't do that. This is going to be 0. I was going to try and stack these and get 2 of them. All right, so this is going to be 1,980 points. You can find a way to do the Household. Yeah, you can do that. You just won't get to take this Guardian of the Deep Woods. But again, the reason why I like this list, this is 1,980 points, is because I get 3, i.e. 6 bases of Forest to put down on the board before I start. All right, my general is that Tree Lord Ancient. Spirit of Durthu is the bodyguard. I've got a, let me see here. I've got, well, I could take a Branch Wraith or a Branch Witch as my extra caster. 2 units of Dryads, 1 at 20 strong, 1 at 10 strong, and then the 10 strong Tree Revenants. That's my list. That is a list. That's a big, heavily wooded list, no Alarial. So this is just one of many ways you can do this, guys. There's a lot of different ways you can I'm going to save that. Yes. There's a lot of ways you can build this up. I'd love to see your lists. Feel free to put them in the down below, in the post down below. There's probably a lot of other people that have been putting out videos with Sylvaneth. I discuss. Be respectful, please. Discuss below. Tell me what your ideas are and thoughts are, especially with some of the gray area abilities that we talked about. Keep an eye out for Warhammer Weekly, which is part of the YouTuber community, Tom and Vince. And, of course, Tactica Tuesday with James and Paul, all great areas of content amongst many other YouTubers that are putting out great content for Age of Sigmar. And keep an eye out for other ones I'm going to do. I have a bunch of them, not just list buildings and faction, overviews, but they're just going to go through everything as an update. If you have interest in ones that you're interested in that you want to go and shoot over to me and tell me, hey, I'd love to try these out. What do you think? How would you dissect these? Let me know. Of course, let me know. Let me know what kind of stuff that you'd like as far as content. Check me out on Twitter. Check me out on Facebook. There's a Tremendous Damage group on Facebook. There's also Warhammer YouTubers. I implore you to join. Check me out also on Patreon. Patreon or Patreon. However, look, if you're looking to, if you want to contribute to the channel, stuff that I'm going to put it towards is, going out to shows and reporting on them and putting out events and improving some of my technical stuff as well. But you don't have to. It's just if you want to contribute, feel free to do so. I'm MC1 Gamer. I really appreciate you tuning in, and have a great day. Looking forward to the next everybody else's content that's out there, and having the General's Handbook finally release and for everybody to have access to at the same time, for us to all just be able to just dive into all the different formats of play. Have a great day, everyone.